Ever wondered how those massive stone castles kept their inhabitants from turning into medieval popsicles? You read about to discover the ingenious and often bizarre methods that kept people alive through brutal winters when a single cold snap could mean the difference between life and death. Picture this. You're standing in a towering medieval castle during the dead of winter, and the temperature outside has plummeted so low that your breath forms ice crystals the moment it leaves your mouth. The stone walls around you are so thick they could stop a cannonball, but they're also conducting every ounce of cold from the outside world directly into your living space. Welcome to medieval central heating, where survival required creativity, endurance, and sometimes pure desperation. The first thing that would shock you about medieval castle heating is that these architectural marvels were essentially giant stone refrigerators. Castle walls, often 8 to 12 feet thick, were designed to keep enemies out, not cold. The massive stones absorbed frigid air like sponges, creating an environment where indoor temperatures barely differed from outdoor ones. Imagine living inside a walk-in freezer for months at a time, and you'll start to understand the medieval heating challenge. The Great Hall represented the heart of castle heating strategy. This enormous central room served as the primary gathering space. dine area, and most importantly, the main heated zone where everyone congregated for warmth. The centerpiece was a massive fireplace, sometimes large enough for a person to walk inside, burning logs the size of telephone poles. These fireplaces consumed enormous quantities of wood, often requiring dedicated teams of servants to keep them fed throughout the day and night. But here is where medieval heating gets interesting. The Great Hall fireplace wasn't just about burning wood efficiently. Castle builders developed ingenious methods to maximize heat distribution. They created fire hoods, essentially large stone or metal canopies that captured rising heat and directed it back into the room instead of letting it escape straight up the chimney. Some castles featured fire dogs, decorative metal supports that elevated burning logs, allowing air to circulate underneath and creating more complete combustion. The wealthy inhabitants had access to braziers, portable metal containers filled with burning charcoal or wood that could be moved from room. These medieval space heaters were essentially metal bowls on legs, filled with glowing coals and carried by servants to wherever warmth was needed most. The danger was obvious. Open flames in wooden structures filled with tapestries and straw bedding created constant fire hazards that claimed entire castles. For those living in castle chambers, the primary heating source was often a simple charcoal brazier placed in the center of the room. The lucky few might have had a fireplace built into their chamber wall, sharing a chimney system with other rooms. These personal fireplaces were status symbols, available only to the most important residents. Everyone else huddled around their brazier and hoped the charcoal didn't run out before dawn. Medieval people developed an entire wardrobe strategy around staying warm. Layering wasn't just fashion, it was survival. They wore multiple tunics made of wool, the primary insulating material available. Underneath, they had linen undergarments that absorbed moisture and provided a base layer. Over everything went heavy cloaks made of thick wool, often lined with fur if they could afford it. The wealthiest castle inhabitants wore robes lined with ermine, fox, or even bear fur. Footwear presented particular challenges in stone castles where floors radiated cold like ice rinks. People wore thick woolen socks inside leather boots, and many added wooden platforms called pattens underneath their shoes to create insulation between their feet and the frozen floor. Inside their chambers, they might wear soft leather slippers stuffed with wool or straw for additional warmth. Bedtime required a military-level strategic planning to survive the night. Medieval beds were often enclosed in heavy curtains that created a small, heatable space around the sleeping area. They used warming pans, metal containers filled with hot coals that were run between bed sheets before climbing in. Multiple people shared beds, not just for space efficiency, but for body heat, creating human warming systems that could mean survival on the coldest nights. The bed itself was an engineering marvel of heat retention. They started with a wooden frame, added a foundation of rope supports, then layered on straw mattresses, wool blankets, fur coverlets, and finally, heavy tapestries. The wealthiest inhabitants might have had beds with built-in brazier compartments underneath, creating medieval heated waterbeds without the water. Castles incorporated ingenious architectural features specifically for heat management. Spiral staircases were designed to spiral clockwise, creating natural wind barriers that prevented cold drafts from shooting straight up the stairs like frozen tornadoes. Doorways featured heavy wooden doors reinforced with iron, often double doors, creating airlocks that trapped heat inside rooms. Windows presented massive heating challenges since glass was expensive and rare. Most castle windows were simply openings in stone walls that could be covered with wooden shutters, oiled cloth, or in wealthy castles, thin sheets of horn that let in light while blocking wind. During severe weather, inhabitants would seal windows completely with heavy tapestries, creating darkness but retaining heat. The kitchen served as an additional heating source for the entire castle. Medieval kitchens featured enormous hearths that burned continuously, creating warm zones that servants and residents could access for warmth. These kitchens often connected to the Great Hall through serving passages, allowing heated air to flow between spaces. Castle designers developed hypocaust systems borrowed from Roman engineering, where heated air from furnaces flowed through hollow spaces in walls and floors. These primitive central heating systems required constant maintenance and fuel, but they could warm entire sections of castles. Only the wealthiest castles featured such luxury heating systems. Hot stones provided portable heating solutions that required no flames. Servants would heat stones in kitchen fires, then wrap them in cloth and place them in beds under feet, or carry them to warm specific areas. These medieval heating pads stayed warm for hours and presented no fire danger, making them safer alternatives to braziers in sleeping areas. Animal heat played a crucial role in castle heating strategies, and these companions provided constant heat throughout cold nights. Larger animals, like horses and cattle, were often housed in lower levels of castles, with their body heat rising to warm human living spaces above. The castle's population itself created significant heat. Great halls filled with dozens of people generated substantial warmth through body heat, breathing, and activity. Medieval celebrations and feasts served the dual purpose of entertainment and communal heating, bringing everyone together in the warmest space available. Food choices reflected heating priorities. Medieval inhabitants consumed enormous quantities of hot soups, stews, and warm ales specifically to raise their body temperature from the inside. Spiced wines and heated beer provided internal warming that helped people endure the external cold. Kitchens prepared warming foods like porridge and hot bread that served as internal heating systems. Castle inhabitants developed daily routines centered around heat conservation. They woke at dawn to restart fires that had burned low overnight, spent daylight hours in the warmest areas available, and prepared extensively for each night's survival. Activities like weaving, blacksmithing, and cooking doubled as heating strategies since they generated warmth while accomplishing necessary tasks. Servants played crucial roles in medieval heating systems. Teams of workers were dedicated entirely to fire management, hauling wood, cleaning chimneys, maintaining braziers, and ensuring that heat sources remained functional throughout the day and night. These heating servants were essential personnel whose work determined whether inhabitants survived severe weather. Smoke management presented constant challenges in castle heating. While fires provided warmth, they also filled living spaces with smoke that could cause serious health problems. Castle builders developed sophisticated chimney systems and ventilation methods to remove smoke while retaining heat, creating a delicate balance between warmth and breathability. The reality of medieval castle heating reveals that these impressive fortifications were barely habitable during winter months. Despite ingenious heating methods and constant effort, castle inhabitants endured temperatures that would shock modern people. They developed remarkable resilience and created heating strategies that kept them alive through conditions that would challenge our modern heating systems. Their survival depended on community cooperation, strategic resource management, and accepting discomfort levels that we'd consider unbearable today. Yet through necessity, they created heating innovations that laid groundwork for modern systems, proving that human ingenuity can overcome even the most challenging environmental conditions when survival depends on staying warm in stone. Cold medieval castles.